So I love class discussions. There is probably not a better way for me to get to know my students and what they're thinking and how they're thinking than to discuss in class. I'm a particular fan of Socratic seminars. I'm not the best facilitator, but I do have a lot of fun doing them, and kids really get a lot out of those. The biggest problem with in-class discussions is that only one person gets to talk at a time. And so if you have a bigger class or you have a lot of talkers in the class, you end up losing ideas and moving on before people are ready to move on, or staying on the topic too long for some people and then they get bored. And so it's a big management nightmare to have a class discussion really stay focused and let everybody participate. And so the second strategy is using VoiceThread for asynchronous discussions. Now, it's not something that should take the place of in-class discussions, but should be in addition to, so that you have kids that might not otherwise participate in an in-class discussion. They will participate in an asynchronous VoiceThread discussion. The greatest thing about this is it gives everybody a voice and lets everybody say what they want to say without having to wait their turn. And so you get your idea, you immediately put it on the VoiceThread. And that way you get to say what you want to say without having to hold on to it, hold on to it, hold on to it. Dang, I forgot what I was going to say. Or, oh, so-and-so already said it. So it's a great strategy for that and for having discussions that really allow everybody to participate. One of the other problems I've had with class discussions is I'm never sure when to shut somebody down when they're talking for a really long time. I don't want to shut them down completely, but it's like, oh, okay, somebody else needs to talk now. And so with an asynchronous discussion, you don't have the one kid who monopolizes the entire conversation, and you also don't have the kid who would share except that everybody else is talking and they're just not comfortable raising their hand in front of class. So you get a lot more voices in an asynchronous discussion, and a lot more participation, although you don't get the give and take. So definitely use asynchronous discussions with in-class discussions, maybe even before in-class discussions, and use them that way. So here's an example of an asynchronous discussion that I did with my AP juniors. So here's what the discussion is. Let me give you some background on this class. So I have a class of AP juniors, and it is huge. I have 38 kids in this class. So if you think managing a class discussion with 20 or so kids who are all wanting to participate is hard, try with 38. It was an absolute nightmare to have class discussions. And so we did a lot of these. This is one for a project that they were doing. They were using war analogies to talk about different cultural things in society, so like the war on drugs, or the war on women, or the war on whatever. And so I threw out a bunch of examples of things in contemporary society that were treated like wars. They had opponents and weapons, and there were bystanders, and there was fighting going on. And so we used these war analogies to talk about different social things that were working in society. So we did this in conjunction with Tim O'Brien's The Things They Carried. So as we were talking about him going through the process of being in a war, then we would talk about these other things. And then their final project, they got into a group and they picked one of these cultural things, and they kind of built a project around defining it, or using an analogy of war to define it. And so that was a really fun project. But this was the opening piece for that. And so we talked about wars, we talked about fighting and opponents and bystanders and weapons and all of this stuff. How does the media influence war? And then I gave them this voice thread. And so for this voice thread, what they were supposed to do is go through and look at each of the slides. There are 16 slides after this opening one. They go through each of the slides and they give their opinion about how is it a war. So is it like who are the opponents, who are the victims, who are the bystanders, what are the weapons, and they were just trying to dig deep and practice using the war analogy to describe things in contemporary society. And so this is my demo one. Each one I have me giving directions. You can't see the whole thing. This one's of Ellis Island, so this is a war on immigration. This one is reproductive rights. Okay. This one is wealth inequality, or the downfall of the middle class. Also, wealth equality. War on drugs. War on terror. So you can see there are different ways that they could go through it, and they had an entire class period to work on this asynchronous discussion. Now, this isn't the whole one. I stripped a lot of the comments away because I didn't have permission to show their faces. Sorry. The idea is that you have all of these slides or topics, and then people comment on them. So I had groups working together. I had kids working individually. I have a bank of computers in my room, so I had 10 computers. The kids were on my computer. There's a VoiceThread app, and so I had a lot of kids on cell phones that were answering questions. And either alone or with a partner or in a small group, they answered these and talked about how each one of these cultural things was a war. And that gave them lots of background information, and it also let me know kind of where they stood on particular issues and topics, and what topics seemed to be most interesting to everybody, so that when it came time to pick topics for their projects, I could say, hey, a lot of people were really interested in this, maybe that might be a good group topic. Okay, so they continue to go through and answer. And then this asynchronous discussion can be used in several ways. Like I said, for me, for this class, I used it to get their feedback, get them practicing thinking about war as an analogy, and to share their ideas and to get some information about maybe what would be good topics for their future project. You could also do this as like a pre-discussion where you have images or videos or text, and you have students go through it before you have an in-class discussion so that they're prepared for that in-class discussion. It would work both ways. It's a great strategy to use, and asynchronous discussions let everybody have a voice.